Hello everybody and welcome to the Hungaroring just outside Budapest as we approach the midpoint of the International GT Open season. This is the first of two races this weekend that will lead us into the summer break in what has been an extremely competitive season so far. So it's hello from Ben Evans as you join us on a cloudy but really very, very nice summer's afternoon here at the Hungaroring. The heavy rain of this morning has fortunately blown away and burnt away, and we have got perfect conditions to enjoy 70 minutes of racing from the International GT Open. And what a race it promises to be, because this morning's qualifying session was absolutely fantastic, really, really close, which was eventually claimed by Michael Mack in terms of pole position in the Spirit of Race Ferrari. He was able to navigate the drying track, the traffic, to put the car on pole position by just shy of 0.2 of a second. The car watching now is the sporting new Mercedes of Antonio Coimbra as he heads towards the grid. The pit lane has just been opened. This is the installation lap for the cars ahead of the 70-minute race. Now here is the championship leader, Albert Costa. Costa and teammate in the FREAM Racing Lexus, Philip Frommenwieler, they lead the standings by just 4 points from Thomas Biaggi and Giovanni Venturini, with Venturini lining up in 3rd place this afternoon, whereas Albert Costa will be starting from 5th. And then 3rd in the standings, it's Fran Rueda and Victor Bouveng. They are on 38 points, as are the pole position pairing of Michael Mack and Miguel Ramos. And it was Ramos and Mack and Rueda and Bouveng who split the wins last time out in Paul Ricard. So will it be a second victory of the season for the Spirit of Race Ferrari? We will find out as Mack winds his way around the sinuous Hungaroring circuit towards the grid. Now, the prospects of the race this afternoon are very, very good, because when we were last here in 2014 for the International GT Open, we had a brace of fantastic races, because this is a track where overtaking can be tricky, but at the same time, you can get the cars running very, very closely to each other, looking every which way to try and find a way past. So we should be in for plenty of entertainment, as the very full grid beginning to form up. 24 cars in total taking to the start, and the good news is that Marco Ciocci, who we lost early in qualifying with a gearbox problem, is going to be taking his place at the back of the grid, admittedly with a lot of work to do in the AF course Ferrari. Smack picking his way through the grid. There is the Racing Trevor BMW, new entrant for this weekend, and it is Christian Maltrek who takes to the start. We, in fact, can go in car with Christian Maltrek as he heads in towards turn 7 now. This an innovation that we're bringing you this weekend, and hopefully the rest of the season is some live in-car coverage from cars during the course of the race. So Christian Maltrek was impressive as well in qualifying earlier on today, eventually lining up in 13th place, with a good chance to get the driver's eye perspective of the Hungaroring circuit, as he just gets a little bit of warmth into the Michelin tyre, inspects how the track conditions have changed. Run from turns 13 to 14. Section of the track as well that was catching a lot of drivers out in qualifying. Track limits being very closely enforced, and again it meant that there are a couple of quick cars that may be a little bit lower down the grid than we'd have anticipated, due to their best time being deleted for track limit violations. It's Christian Maltrek coming around the final turn, and there you can see the grid all formed up in front of us. So now he picks his way through. As anticipation builds amongst the spectators, just a few minutes away from the start of the race. So there you see the field looking absolutely fantastic, with pole position, Mikael Mack and Miguel Ramos alongside. It is Lance D'Arnold who has stepped into the SPS Automotive Mercedes this weekend in place of Tom Onslow-Cole. But Mack was all smiles after qualifying. He and Miguel Ramos, a very well-balanced driver pairing. And Miguel went extremely well here 2014 at the wheel of a Corvette in the International GT Open. So Lance D'Arnold alongside Valentin Pierberg this weekend, and this a track that has been really suiting the Mercedes. It was the MS Racing Mercedes of Martin Conrad. Alexander Praquina was quickest in free practice yesterday, with Arnold the quickest of the Mercedes in qualifying. So for Giovanni Venturini and Thomas Biaggi, this could be an opportunity in the Imperiale Racing Lamborghini Huracan to move towards the top of the championship standings. Again, a well-balanced driver pairing and also a team that always plays the long game with each weekend. They're yet to win a race this year, but they've always been in the hunt. Ever more impressive throughout the course of the season have been the Teo Martin Motorsport BMWs, and this is Thiago Montero's debut alongside Lourenco Barão de Viega. Last time out, Barão de Viega partnered by Augusto Farfus and was so unlucky due to various issues for the BMW, but they will certainly challenge for the podium. Here then is the championship leader, Albert Costa, in the Emil Frey Racing Lexus that he shares with Philippe Fromenville. The car's won twice this year at Estoril and at Spa-Francorchamps. And as ever, Albert Costa all smiles after qualifying earlier on today. Again, a track should suit the balance of the Lexus. Well, a wretched weekend in Paul Ricard for the Triple F Racing Lamborghini, but for Vitantonio Liuzzi, one of his strongest qualifying performances of the season to date, 6th place, and he and Hiroshi Hamaguchi looking for their first podium of the year. Victor Bouveng and Fran Rueda, again, watch for them coming into play as the race unfolds. It's the Swede Bouveng who takes the start, but this young driver pairing, after an excellent weekend of Paul Ricard, now really coming in to the championship hunt, and it's going to be checkered flag today's race that brings us to the midway point of the season. Let's have a look then in full at how they line up. So Mikael Mack and Lance D'Arnold on the front row of the grid, then Venturini and Thiago Montero, a very strong row 2. Albert Costa makes it 5 different manufacturers in the top 5 places on the inside of row 3, alongside Vitantonio Liuzzi. Row 4, Victor Bouveng and Martin Conrad. Conrad really impressive all weekend in the Mercedes. Row 5, watch for Duncan Tappy. 9th place, maybe not indicative of he or the McLaren's true pace. And the same goes for Rob Bell in the Balf McLaren, who starts 11th alongside Hendrik Still in the Conrad Lamborghini. Christian Mautrek from 13th on the grid alongside Norbert Siedler, who steps in to the farm back at Lexus. Then we've got Kang Ling and Antonio Coimbra on row 8. Ling losing a lot of times in qualifying. Alex West and Mario Plasciuta. Row 9, watch for those cars coming into contention late on. Marcello Hahn, likewise, has been very impressive all season. The Drivex Mercedes alongside Alex Moisev in the Kaspersky Ferrari. That's Marcio Basso and Fu Song Yang on row 11. And then the 12th row, Marco Ciocci will, if nothing else, be spectacular as he carves through from 24th. Seconds away from the green flag here at the Hungaroring, the 7th race of the International GT Open season. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I think we could be in for some really entertaining racing as the field get waved off for their last chance to inspect the 4.3 kilometre Hungaroring circuit before we go racing for 70 minutes. As ever, there is the mandatory pit stop that comes between the 28th and 42nd minute of the race. So that means there is that 14-minute window where strategy can start to come into play. In car with Christian Mautrek, just behind Hendrik Still in the Conrad Lamborghini. And you get a sense from the driver's eye view of just how the road falls away into this very sharp turn 1. And then they kick down through turn 2 towards the left-hander at turn 3. This opening sequence of turns presents some good opportunities for overtaking before then they run down out of turn 4 and away from the pit complex. So a little bit of a glance there at the Conrad Lamborghini Huracan. Hendrik Still Again, looking impressive in qualifying, but the front of the field, Mikael Mack will be hoping to get the jump. A lot of interest, of course, this weekend for Thiago Monteiro in the Teo Martin Motorsport BMW, who was being mobbed by the fans after qualifying earlier on. And as ever with all the drivers in the field, very, very obliging with spectators in terms of photos and autographs. And if you ever get the chance to visit one of these races, drivers always very happy to meet fans and spectators. So they then flick through turns 8 and 9, this tight chicane in this technical mid-section of the circuit before the corners just start to open up a little bit. Turn 13 is going to be a critical corner in the race for two reasons. Firstly, because it does open up the overtaking opportunity on the brakes into turn 14, but also because in qualifying we saw track limits being very strictly enforced, and it was mainly coming out of turn 13 where we saw drivers losing their times. Well, for the Triple F Lamborghini in front of us there of Vitantonio Liuzzi, they had a torrid time in Paul Ricard where the car caught fire on the installation lap for race 1, and sadly the damage was such that it put it out for the weekend. But Liuzzi and Hamaguchi looking good in free practice yesterday and looking good in qualifying this morning for Liuzzi. They may well be in a position to snatch an outright race podium. Field bunching up behind the pace car, getting ready as ever for the rolling start, and it's a multicoloured and varied grid stretching back into the distance as Mikael Mack and Lance D. Arnold just pacing the field. Then it's the bright green and blue Imperiale Racing Lamborghini of Giovanni Venturini, the Teo Martin Motorsport BMW of Thiago Monteiro, and you can pick that out as opposed to the car of Victor Bouveng because of the bright red bonnet on the car. Bouveng's got a bright blue bonnet. As Miguel Ramos watches from the, of course, pit box. There is the SPS Automotive Garage. Tracking their car to the outside of the front row as the pace car peels off. So Mikael Mack paces the field through the final turn, getting ready for the rolling start of the race, waiting for the lights to change. As the rolling thunder gets underway now, and away we go. It's a very good start from the SPS Mercedes. It's very bunched behind as they all squabble for position, heading down towards turn 1. Hendrick still trying to challenge in the Conrad Lamborghini to the outside, but as they head through the first turn, it's Mikael Mack who leads the way. Second place is Arnold. Third is Venturini. They're all cleanly through. Duncan Tappy has made a lightning start up into 4th position. Brilliant stuff from Tappy. We thought he was going to go well as they all fight their way downhill. Monteiro goes side by side with Albert Costa as they squabble for 5th and 6th, and it's Vitantonio Liuzzi who's lost out a little bit in the Triple F Racing Lamborghini as still Monteiro and Costa fight for ground. The leading quartet already beginning to try and ease away as Albert Costa looks to the outside Thiago Monteiro through turn 7 on towards the chicane at turns 8 and 9. Costa determined not to concede in the Emil Frey Racing Lexus, but eventually he has to, slots in just in front of Victor Bouveng as they all hustle their way round the opening lap. The Racing Trevor BMW just behind Kang Ling as Marco Ciocci's already made 4 or 5 positions through the opening couple of turns, as we would rather have expected him to. There's Ciocci running out wide, trying to ease his way past Marcello Hahn. So the order is Mikael Mack from Lance D. Arnold, then Giovanni Venturini, Duncan Tappy in 4th, pretty much the rest of the field in 5th, but it's headed by Thiago Monteiro. Then Albert Costa, Victor Bouveng, Rob Bell, Hendrick Still with Andrea Fontana completing the top 10. More ground gained for Ciocci. He moves clear of the Silver Drive X Mercedes and Marcello Hahn. The field climb into turn 16, about to swoop round the hairpin to complete the first lap of the race, and Mikael Mack trying to stretch his legs from the Mercedes. Then headlights ablaze for Venturini. Duncan Tappy there in 4th in the Garage 59 McLaren as Rob Bell in the Balfe Motorsport McLaren just has a little bit of a nibble to the inside of Victor Bouveng. Nothing doing there though, unfortunately for Bell as he challenges again into turn 3. Norbert Seidler making his debut in the Farnbacher Lexus this weekend, and he's got Antonio Liuzzi to chase down. He's got another Lamborghini Huracan to keep behind him as Alex West gets demoted as well by Ciocci, who's already up into 18th position. And because of the challenges of overtaking here at the Hungaroring, it's always a case of how much ground can you make in the early stages. In car with Christian Mautarek in pursuit of the Raton Racing Lamborghini of Kang Ling. One of the things you never really appreciate till you ride in car is just how smooth these top-level drivers look, unflustered and unflappable. And there's the RS59 McLaren, the Duncan Tappy. He's got Albert Costa chasing him down. Costa has, out of our sight, jumped Thiago Monteiro, and he's already trying to chase down the McLaren. So the brace of BMWs running in tandem. Monteiro from Bouveng. Then it's Rob Bell who's next along. Meanwhile, Andrea Fontana looks to challenge Hendrik Still, the two Lamborghini Hurricanes. Fortunately, avoiding becoming a tornado as they ran side by side into turn 15. They've got then the MS Racing Mercedes, Martin Conrad just behind, with Vitantonio Liuzzi snapping at their heels as they swing out of the final turn. And Conrad has been absolutely flying this weekend in the MS Racing Mercedes, and now enjoying the challenge of going wheel to wheel with XF1 racer Liuzzi as Fontana pulls the pin, launches the inside of Hendrik Still into turn 1. Still is not static though. He comes back at Fontana as they run side by side out of turn 2 towards turn 3, and Still, he may well find some traction here. There's been a lot of grip to the outside of turn 3 today, but Fontana just able to squeeze out the Lamborghini. And then it's the Mercedes. So everybody just comes over the slight crest into turn 6 on the brakes, down through the gears at turn 7. Race start, our timing screen tells us, is under investigation. As we go back in car with Chris Mautarek, and he's now got Norbert Seidler just ahead of him in the Farnbacher Racing Lexus. And in Estoril and Spa, Farnbacher's taking a winner piece in each of those meetings. They led the championship going in to Paul Ricard, but thereafter it was a little bit miserable. So our race leader, Mikael Mack, he's 1.2 seconds clear of Lance d'Arnold. And then the Mercedes up ahead of Venturini. Now the fight for fourth coming together very nicely, because the Emil Frey Racing Lexus of Albert Costa up behind Duncan Tappy. Costa and Tappy share in common is they both were stars of Formula Renault 2-litre racing going back a few years ago, and also they never really quite had the backing that their talent deserved to move up to the upper echelons of single-seater racing. But they are very firmly established now as two of the go-to guns in international GT racing, as Rob Bell looks to try and challenge Victor Bouveng. Balfe Motorsport McLaren, one of the top cars in the Pro-Am Championship, and they'll be hoping to try and take some points off the Pro-Am Championship leaders, Ciocci and Perezzini, this afternoon, given that Marco Ciocci is currently in 17th place. And we've got this queue behind Andrea Fontana, which comprises much of the field, including the Conrad Motorsport Lamborghini of Hendrik Still. There is Hendrik. He has got Martin Conrad in the MS Racing Mercedes just behind him. It's through turns 8 and 9. The fight for 4th and 5th. Still very close between Costa and Tappy. Then Monteiro, Victor Bouveng, Rob Bell, Andrea Fontana. Hendrik Still just running out a little bit wide. Martin Conrad flashes his headlights. I think that Hendrik Still needs much reminding that the Mercedes is right behind him. Then we have got Liuzzi in the Lamborghini, Kang Ling in the Raton Lamborghini. Then Norbert Seidler in the Farnbacher Lexus. We've got two cars summoned to race control, which are Victor Bouveng and Andrea Fontana. Find out why. As Liuzzi looks inside Martin Conrad. Oh, a little bit of a tap there as Lamborghini kicks sideways as they went through the hairpin. Conrad, though, tries to fight back to the inside line, but Liuzzi able to dart past, gains the position. Vitantonio Liuzzi moves up into 11th place as a result. And now Kang Ling might fancy his chances as well to challenging the MS Racing Mercedes into the opening turn. Ling, the bright gold Lamborghini, you wouldn't miss it on a dark night, or indeed from a satellite, but he isn't quite close enough to challenge, but it brings Norbert Siedler into the mix as well. Christian Maltriak, meanwhile, has got Marco Ciocci looming large on his tail. So some great dicing in the early stages here. Here's another look then at the move from the Utsi. Conrad was just setting up for a cutback on Hendrik Still. He gets through. A little bit of a sideways love tap to the Mercedes. So Christian Maltriak, he will try and benefit from the cars in front, all bunching up behind each other. Marco Ciocci closing up as well. And it's only really just up the road ahead of them that you get a little bit of a gap in the traffic. The field all still very closely bunched, I should add, because this fight, we're watching, Ciocci's only some 16 seconds back from the race leader. Meanwhile, Rob Bell still a little bit frustrated in his efforts to overhaul Victor Bouveng. The same goes for Albert Costa. This is the fight for 4th and 5th. Duncan Tappy in 4th. The Orange Garage 59 McLaren. He and Mike Benham having a, well, indeed the team as a whole really having a difficult weekend in Paul Ricard last time out. But looking to bounce back. Again, front runners in the Pro-Am Championship. Duncan Tappy and Mike Benham. And currently holding down 2nd place in the Pro-Am class in the race. So out of the final turn, and Vitantonio Liuzzi now looking to try and line up the move on Hendrik Still in the battle for 10th and 11th place. The marine blue Conrad Motorsport Lamborghini Huracan with the incredibly intricately liveried Triple F Lamborghini, the Roger Dubois livery of the car looks absolutely fantastic, and up in the flesh even more spectacular than it comes across on television as Liuzzi swings downhill out of turn 4, and he can see the prize up the road ahead of him just beginning to escape, because we're almost 10 minutes into the race, some 18 minutes away from the pit window opening. Now here is Antonio Coimbra, currently 2nd in the AM class to Martin Conrad. So the race order then, Mikael Mack leads the way, Lance Diarnold is 2nd, 3rd is Giovanni Ventrini. We're watching the fight for 4th between Duncan Tappy and Albert Costa, and then it's Thiago Montero in 6th, his Teo Martin Motorsport teammate Victor Bouveng in 7th. Lovely shot there actually in through the windscreen of the Garage 59 McLaren. You could just see Duncan Tappy working the wheel. And watch the McLarens later on in the race, because it's a car that's generally a little bit more kind to the tyres than some of its rivals. Same time, Albert Costa, in pursuit of his 3rd victory of the season, trying to re-extend his championship lead, which is certainly in jeopardy the way that the positions are currently in the race. If things stayed as they were, Mikael Mack and Miguel Ramos would be moving to the top of the standings. Still, though, a long way to go. We're just on lap 7 of the race in the July sunshine at the Hungaroring. And Mack's lead over Arnold is out to 2.5 seconds. It's a further 2.5 seconds back to Giovanni Ventrini, then a further 2.5 seconds back to Duncan Tappy. It means that Mikael Mack is just starting to stretch the field a little bit. That's going to give Miguel Ramos potentially a nice buffer to play with when he takes over the car post pit stops. Meanwhile, Vitantonio Liuzzi has found a way past Hendrik Still, and now Still is under pressure once more from Martin Conrad. Kang Ling still with them. And Conrad almost looks to the inside of Hendrik Still into the chicane at turns 8 and 9. It was half an opportunity as Marco Ciocci has already found a way past Christian Maltriak, now looking to depose Norbert Siedler. But Siedler, who has been, again, a top sports car racer for many seasons, not going to be the easiest man to overhaul here. But Ciocci, after the disappointment of qualifying, spoke to him after the session, was in a good mood for the race. As a challenge for Kang Ling. Looks to the inside of Martin Conrad. Conrad tries to shut the door. Nothing doing there. Gets squeezed out by the Raton Racing Lamborghini. But he's got the inside line for the hairpin. And Conrad's not going to give this to Kang Ling easily. He fights back. The Lamborghini has to concede ground Well done, Martin Conrad. Great dicing between him and Kang Ling. And now Ling looks to come back again in the Lambo. Here's another look at it. Very clean between the pair of them. Ling to the inside at turn 14. Conrad repays the favour into turn 15. Down the start and finish straight. Anybody quite close enough to challenge? Not really. Marco Ciocci thinks about it. Ciocci, the way he drives the Ferrari, so expressive, as he's now alongside Norbert Seether as they come out of turn 1, down through turn 2 into turn 3. Ciocci with his nose in front, goes around the Lexus, gains the place, and Marco Ciocci up to 14th from 24th on the grid in just 13 minutes of racing. Really good stuff this from Ciocci. Headlights ablaze on the AF Course Ferrari as he sets off in pursuit of Conrad and Ling. For the farmbacker Lexus, it's just, after they were so strong in the opening quartet of races, 2 retirements at Paul Ricard, and the car just not really been at the sharp end this weekend either, as the Emil Frey Racing Lexus, Albert Costa, certainly is. And indeed, there is Costa, headlights ablaze, pursuing Tappi out of turn 14 in towards turn 15. But you can see Duncan Tappi's experience, because one of the tricks here at the Hungaroring is that if you stick to the racing line, you focus on your corner exit speed, particularly through this turn now, there's very little that the cars behind can do to challenge. And Tappi not really slowing his pace at all, and it means that Thiago Monteiro behind in 6th isn't making much ground into this scrap, which is now best part of 9 seconds back from race leader Mikael Mack. There is Victor Bouveng in 7th. Bouveng has shaken off the attentions of Rob Bell, who continues in 8th. Andrea Fontana is in 9th. Vitantonio Liuzzi now completes the top 10. Thiago Monteiro, the immensely popular Portuguese driver, was scheduled to make his debut in Paul Ricard, but a slight injury meant that he missed that round. Racing on the streets, of course, of his home World Touring Car Championship round last weekend in Villarreal, before moving across to the GT Open for this weekend, alongside a long-time friend and rival in junior formulas, Lourenco Beirao de Viega. So hustling across the curbs, turns 8 and 9. Duncan Tappi and Albert Costa continuing their fight for 4th. And Tappi, at the moment, seems to have an answer for everything that Albert Costa can throw at him. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, Mikael Mack continuing to try and stretch away from Lance D'Arnold. Giovanni Venturini a solid 3rd. This is really where the fun is. It's Hendrik Still, Martin Conrad and Kang Ling, as they have been throughout the course of the race. They're being caught by Marco Ciocci, and can't imagine that Ciocci is going to shy away from getting elbows deep into this scrap. And it is Hendrik Still who's been the cork in the bottle, because as soon as Martin Conrad isn't distracted by those around him, he's coming straight back onto terms with the Lamborghini. But Hendrik, likewise, has been able to keep the Mercedes at bay. But now Ciocci has got a little bit of a run here on Kang Ling as they come out the final turn, down the start and finish straight, head towards turn 1. Ciocci states his intentions early, and he sees a gap as Kang Ling leaves half a car's width, and Ciocci does not need a second invitation, opens the door wide and is able to sneak past, snatches the place, goes 13th. And this is really important with an eye towards the Pro-Am Championship standings, because Ciocci is driving himself and Pier Giuseppe Perezzini into contention for a good slug of Pro-Am points. Next target, Martin Conrad, and then Hendrik Still. Given the way that Still has just been backing this group up, it means that Ciocci is immediately onto terms with the MS Racing Mercedes. He might even have a little bit of a run into turn 10 here. Ciocci shows himself to the inside of the Mercedes. Conrad, by the way, alongside Alexander Aquina, their car the quickest in free practice yesterday of everybody. Really, really good package underneath them this weekend. but Chiocci looks to hustle the Mercedes, heading towards turn 14. Conrad says, no, you don't. I'll cover the inside line, thank you. And again, the Mercedes, does he leave a gap for Chiocci into the hairpin? Of course he doesn't. There's no way through there for Marco Chiocci. Then they climb up into turn 16, through to the end of the lap. Just over 50 minutes remaining. 10 minutes until the pit window is opened and the element of strategy comes into play. And Mikael Mack, the race leader, who we've not really seen much of, doing quite a good job actually of stretching the field as Chiocci flashes his headlights at Martin Conrad. Conrad again, just positioning the Mercedes as he needs to. Is there a gap there to the inside at turn 3 for Marco Chiocci? If there was, it's now disappeared. Then down towards turn 4. Again, good stuff from Conrad. Just making Chiocci work for it. And then the slight run uphill through the kick at turn 6. And into turn 7 that really is the start of the run back towards the pits. As again, Conrad, 2 corners not defending. He's immediately up with Hendrik Still, who has, throughout all of this, remained really quite unflappable, despite the very best efforts of those around him. Thoroughly enjoyable scrap, this one, as Martin Conrad, Marco Chiocci, Kang Ling, all ganging up on Hendrik Still. And Hendrik Still just has stuck to his guns, hasn't defended at all. But he might have to now. Conrad getting a reasonably good run out of turn 13. So too does Marco Chiocci. And Chiocci sees a gap into turn 14. Conrad can see him coming. Says that's fair enough. I'll just have the inside line for the hairpin. And he tries to force his way back to the inside. Chiocci, he forces the Ferrari wide. It opens the door to Kang Ling as well as they climb up to the final hairpin. Chiocci is now going to make the move. He pushes Conrad wide. It brings Kang Ling into the fight as well as they swing out of the final turn. Brilliant wheel-to-wheel dicing as Chiocci gains the place, goes into 12th position. He's now overtaken half the field from the very back of the grid. A wonderful racecraft from everybody in that scrap. They avoided contact, they gave each other racing room, and gave us plenty of entertainment. So Chiocci now off in pursuit of Hendrik Still, the Conrad Racing Lamborghini, the car's second appearance of the season in the International GT Open. And once more, caught right in the thick of the action. So the race order is Mikael Mack leads, second place is Lance D'Arnold, third Giovanni Venturini, fourth Duncan Tappy, fifth Albert Costa. Here's the decisive move from Chiocci, inside line into the turn 16 hairpin. So there is the fight for fourth, fifth and sixth, Duncan Tappy, Albert Costa, and then Thiago Monteiro. And just behind Monteiro, his teammate Victor Bouveng. So again, the Teo Marti Motorsport BMWs showing very strongly. And this is a track possibly where there was a question mark about how strong the BMW would be. The answer is that at the moment it is doing very nicely, and it certainly might help Bouveng and Rueda in their quest for a few more points. Meanwhile, there's been a sort out and Hendrik Still has lost several places. He's lost out to Chiocci. Oh, there's a spin behind from Kang Ling. Now, is the Raton Racing Lamborghini still in motion? Yes, it is. Oh, and Ling has lost a glut of positions as a result of that rotation. Rejoins now just in the path of Marcello Hahn. It's a disappointment for Kang Ling, because he'd been going so well up until that point. Meanwhile, the race leader's getting in amongst a little bit of traffic. That's Ivor Dunbar in the FF Course Ferrari, who is just being unpicked by Tappy and Costa. And Duncan Tappy, having made an absolutely lightning start to the race, he's now 14 seconds adrift of the race leader, Mikael Mack, but has had his mirrors really throughout the whole of the race filled by Albert Costa, but Costa has not been able to find a way past him. And And now Tiago Monteiro just beginning to close up as well. Question mark around when these cars will dart into the pits. We'd expect to see Duncan Tappy going fairly deep into the pit window. Albert Costa may elect to duck in, try and get the undercut as he hands over to Philip from Avila. I'd imagine that Tiago Monteiro will stay out a little bit deeper into the pit window as well. That opens in just 5 minutes' time, as Tappy and Costa come through. This is to complete the 13th lap of the race. Here's another look at Kangling's spin. Yeah, just being a little bit aggressive with the throttle, and it means the Lamborghini runs out of grip, and around he goes. No harm done, just a real pity, because it had been such a wonderful wheel-to-wheel scrap with that group of cars. So Tappy back under pressure almost immediately from Albert Costa, with then just a car length back to Tiago Monteiro. The fight for 4th, 5th and 6th. The leading trio well up the road. Michael Mack's lead over Lance D'Arnold, 5.5 seconds. It's a further 3.2 seconds back to Giovanni Venturini in the Imperial Racing Lamborghini Huracan. And that's a car that could feature very strongly for victory late on. Thomas Biaggi at the wheel. Same for Miguel Ramos when he takes over from Michael Mack. Meanwhile, Albert Costa just getting that little bit more aggressive now in his efforts to move up into 4th position. Duncan Tappy demonstrating that if it needs to be the case, that the McLaren can be exactly the same width of the Hungaroring circuit. As a result, there's no space at all for Costa to try and pick his way past. And the McLaren just that little bit more agile through the corners. And then Tappy late on the brakes, takes a big bite of curb out of turn 14, then the quick sprint towards the hairpin at turn 15, moves across, claims the racing line, allows Albert Costa to close onto his tail, but then Tappy has that brief propulsion out of turn 15 into turn 16, around the right-hander and through to complete another lap. No change in the order between them. Head into the hairpin at turn 1 for the 15th time. The rear wing on the Lexus almost juddering under the pressure. As Albert Costa gets on the brakes nice and late. Now here is our race leader, Michael Mack, the Spirit of Race Ferrari. We've not seen a lot of Michael Mack, but he converted pole position very nicely. He now leads by 7 seconds over the SPS Automotive Mercedes. And so Michael Mack in really good control of things. Giovanni Venturini in 3rd, Tappy in 4th. He's got a little bit more traffic. He's going to be catching imminently. That's Fu Song Yang in the SF Racing Ferrari. This is one of the slightly shorter lap times that we have in the season, just 1 minute and 3/4. And it does mean that we're getting in and amongst some of the traffic a little bit earlier on than we have seen to be the case in some of the earlier races that we've had this year. There is the Chinese, and for Tappy, where would he like to catch the Ferrari? Well, actually, he's going to catch him in a difficult section of the circuit with this run of hairpins, as Costa thinks about a nibble to the inside at turn 14. Tappy looks to the inside of Fusong Yang at turn 15. Yep. Good driving from Fusong Yang. He spotted the quicker cars, moved aside. So there you see the gap from 1st to 2nd. And Lance D'Arnold likewise in 2nd place. A good buffer over Giovanni Venturini in 3rd position. That leading trio of cars now separated by the best part of 10 seconds. And for the SPS Automotive team, they had a far from easy opening round of the year at Estoril, but thereafter they've been bang on the pace, richly rewarded with a good result, the Rostrum and Pro and Class victory in race 1 in Paul Ricard. Thomas Biaggi and Giovanni Venturini, they've only been on the podium twice this season, 2 second places, but they have been racking up the points. The lowest finish of 9th place being their weakest result of the season to date. Now, Thomas Biaggi last year took the championship with just one victory, but multiple podiums along the way, and you just wonder whether he and Venturini, applying the same strategy for this season, could reap the benefits. So the pit window will have opened by the time the race leaders come to the end of their 16th lap of the race. And that's really the top 11 cars in the field. You're not expecting, I don't think, any of them to be ducking into the pit lane as the pit window opens, certainly early on. It's a 14-minute window, so they're going to have the opportunity, if they want, probably to do 7 or 8 laps. But what we will see is further down the field, like Mario Plasciuta coming in to pass over to Thomas Jaeger, Alex West to hand over to Com Ledegaard. So that's going to make things interesting, as well as Venturini continues his pursuit of the Mercedes. But Giovanni Venturini's now 3 seconds back, as into the pits comes Victor Bouveng to pass over to Fran Rueda. Now this has been a hallmark of the Teo Marti Motorsport season for this driver pairing, because they're so evenly matched in terms of pace. They really do have the luxury of playing with strategy. The same for Andrea Fontana and Vito Postiglione. And Postiglione taking over from about 10th position. He's got a little bit of pit handicap from Paul Ricard to drive around, but nonetheless, that could work out nicely for that pairing. As Tapie and Costa continue to dice wheel to wheel. As also in is Marcello Hahn and Hellmeister, who was so impressive in Paul Ricard, will take over at the wheel of the DriveX Mercedes. For Michael Mack, well, there's no need for him to head towards the pits at all. Thomas Jaeger into the Leckner Racing Mercedes in place of Mario Plasciuta, pretty much exactly as we anticipated would be the case. Fran Rueda gets on in his way, so does Vito Postiglione behind. Also, all change over at Kaspersky Racing. Davide Rizzo in for Alex Moiseev. Also, Com Ledegaard has taken over from Alex West. So 40 minutes to run, 30 minutes completed, and for every one of those minutes, it has been Michael Mack in the Spirit of Race Ferrari who has led the way. Now 7.5 seconds his advantage, and that is going to be a reasonably handy buffer, one would suggest, for Miguel Ramos to inherit. They're in pursuit of their second victory of the season. They won from pole position in race 1 in Paul Ricard. I think the question's going to be just how ambitious the likes of Thomas Biaggi are feeling for the second phase of the race. Philip Fromenvila likewise could well come into contention. But Michael Mack in qualifying earlier on, it was such a busy track, really difficult to pick out a clear lap. We saw lots of drivers struggling to navigate the traffic, and when they did navigate the traffic, being caught out by track limits. But Mack was able to deal with both those challenges, as now Lance Diarnold has got Vito Postiglione right in front of him in his outlap. And Postiglione, well, certainly no lack of temptation to back the Mercedes up into the sister Imperiale Racing Lamborghini. Postiglione is also essentially racing this car, even though it is they're a lap apart because of pit strategies at the moment. So Postiglione is not going to be in a hurry to jump out the way of the SPS Automotive Mercedes. Postiglione the benefit of new tyres, the Mercedes the benefit of a light fuel load. And the German may well be able to move ahead of Postiglione here because, well, at the same time, Postiglione defends into turn 1. The Mercedes draws alongside, but not in front of the Lamborghini. Then looks for the switchback, and Postiglione may have to concede as they run downhill out of turn 2. The Lamborghini, though, still to the inside, but the Mercedes swoops around the outside, moves up ahead of Vito Postiglione. So that's going to be good news for Valentin Pierberg when he takes over the SPS Mercedes. Back to the fight between Duncan Tapie and Albert Costa. Oh, and Tapie a slight wobble through turn 3. That's the first time that we've seen the McLaren looking anything less than very nicely poised. But even so, may have been a slight wobble. It's not exactly gifted a golden opportunity to Albert Costa to come romping through to take control of the place. So they are, as they were, 4th for Tapie, 5th for Costa. The pit window closes in 9 minutes' time when there are 28 minutes left on the clock. So the race order is Michael Mack leads, Lance D'Arnold is 2nd, Giovanni Venturini 3rd, Duncan Tapie 4th, and Albert Costa in 5th. Still Tapie and Costa doing battle as they come towards the end of their 19th lap of the race. Now this battle could turn out to be very, very good news for the Spirit of Race Ferrari of Michael Mack and Miguel Ramos, and the Imperiale Racing Lamborghini of Giovanni Venturini and Thomas Biaggi, because the Lexus is going to have the best part of 20 seconds to try and make up in the latter phase of the race once Philip Fromavila takes over, and clearly the numbers for the Lexus squad suggest that it's worth Costa's while staying out, as now Chiocci is on to terms with Vitantonio Liuzzi. This is the fight for 8th and 9th place, and Marco Chiocci has driven absolutely phenomenally from the very tail of the field, well inside the top 10 now, up to 5th in the Pro-Am class. This is the move for 4th in the Pro-Am class, but former F3000 champion, XF1 racer Vitantonio Liuzzi is hardly going to be jumping aside for Marco Chiocci. It's not to say that Chiocci doesn't fancy his chances, as the Lamborghini Huracan just moving around a little bit offline, and Liuzzi will be handing over to Hiroshi Hamaguchi before too long. They've also got the DriveX Mercedes behind them, which has emerged from the pits. It's down in 19th place, but again, trying to make up ground while he's got the benefit of fresh tyres. As Chiocci looks the inside of Liuzzi, the camera angle possibly made that look more viable than it actually was, but Chiocci hustles the curbs. They've got Alan Hellmeister right with him as Chiocci to the inside of Liuzzi, and Vitantonio Liuzzi has no option but to concede to Marco Chiocci. The Mercedes challenges around the outside as well. Brilliant racing, and I think he's going to go past him. He does indeed. Wonderful action, and who said you couldn't overtake at the Hungaroring? As into the pits now comes the race leader, Michael Mack, at pretty much exactly half race distance to pass over to Miguel Ramos. All stable and routine over at the Spirit of Race team. No need to rush the pit stop unnecessarily. Fair amount of brake dust pouring forth from the car. So that promotes Lance D'Arnold in the SPS Automotive Mercedes, the leader of the race. It promotes Giovanni Venturini to 2nd. Means that Marco Chiocci is up into 7th place. Rob Bell is just ahead of him, as here's another look at it then. Chiocci, well, Liuzzi realised there was nothing he was going to do to stop the rampaging Chiocci, and then half a gap there, which was snaffled by the Mercedes. Still, the Tapie and Costa fight continues, and Albert Costa probably knows every single detail about the tail of the Garage 59 McLaren, but Duncan Tapie has driven magnificently to keep Albert Costa behind him, and Costa, he's running out of opportunities really to make this move during his stint, and I'm a little bit surprised actually the Emil Frey Racing Lexus team haven't brought in Costa to hand over the car, because imagine that Philip Fromavila, if they can get the undercut, might be able to do a little bit more in some clear air. As again, Costa shows himself to the inside of Tapie. Again, Duncan Tapie anticipates that the Lexus would be hoping to sneak past, and therefore keeps him at bay. Meanwhile, Rino Mastronardi, who's in for Andrea Caldarelli in the SF Racing Ferrari team this weekend, has just posted the fastest lap of the race with a 1 minute 43.5 on his first flying lap. So the track really coming to the drivers, particularly those that have got the benefit of fresh tyres. immediately post pit stop. Now, as Tapie defends that a little bit more vigorously from Albert Costa, it is bringing Tiago Monteiro into the mix. Of those that have pitted, it's Miguel Ramos, who is the foremost, from Fran Rueda, then Vito Postiglione. And Ramos, should say, has emerged from the pits some 39 seconds ahead of Fran Rueda, as Martin Conrad, after a superb performance, is in to hand over to Alexander Fraquina. So out hops Conrad, in will hop Fraquina, as Tapie goes side by side with Albert Costa, and Costa tries to pull the pin through turn 7, runs alongside the McLaren as they head towards turn 8. This is where Costa got squeezed out on the first lap, and he loses out once more, and Tapie using just about every trick in the book, as is Albert Costa. Great dicing between these two very, very high-class drivers. And again, they've kept it clean, but they have been absolutely on the limit throughout the course of their stints. They're going to have time, if they want, I think, for one more lap before they absolutely have to come in and make their pit stops. It's the fight for third overall. Duncan Tapie also doing what he can to feed Mike Benham out with a good opportunity of a podium in the Pro-Am class. And Rob Bell, who we've not really talked about as well, in 6th position, much the same, as into the pits now ducks Albert Costa. So this was the last roll of the dice from Costa. He drew alongside the McLaren through turn 7. He somehow found some traction in the Lexus, but he didn't have the track position and therefore couldn't get past. Also in is Tiago Monteiro to pass over to Lourenco Beirao de Viega. So the Teo Martin Motorsport mechanics get to work as Monteiro leaps from the car. Likewise, Albert Costa already hard at work, strapping Philip Fromavila in. And this is how these teams practice, always practicing the pit stops. Very well drilled to make sure the pit stop can be completed as quickly as possible, so the fuel can go in and they don't lose any time. So Miguel Ramos, well, crucially here for Ramos, he's going to be past the pits with lots of time in hand over Philip Fromavila. So for Miguel Ramos, this is looking as if it could work out very nicely for him in terms of a race victory. Meanwhile, Yuri Malachek will jump in place of Christian, as Miguel Ramos effectively is the race leader of those that have pitted, and he's going to be leading it, I have to say, by quite some margin, because Philip Fromavila emerges from the pits only now. Miguel Ramos is already the best part of 30 seconds up the road, as Lance Diarnold jumps in to the pit lane. Valentin Pierberg will take over. This car, of course, the leader of the Pro-Am class through the opening phase of the race, and Giovanni Venturini in as well to hand over to Thomas Biaggi. So the Imperiale Racing team, again, getting to work. And it means that the entire field has now pretty much come in for their pit stops. Rob Bell in to hand over to Sean Balfe. Marco Ciocci likewise to Pier Giuseppe Perezzini. Antonio Coimbra will be in due course to hand over to Luis Silva. Now Miguel Ramos, his advantage over Philip Fromavila is 23.7 seconds. And that is going to be a fairly big ask for Fromavila to chase down. The question is then, where will Thomas Biaggi emerge in all of this? As Antonio Coimbra is in, Luis Silva will take over. So the round of pit stops completed, waiting for Pierberg and Biaggi to emerge from the pits, and then we'll get a sense of the order as already Ramos turns through the opening corner. And one of the beauties of the championship this year has been, because the grid is so huge, that unlike in the past few seasons where pit handicaps are really accumulated from race to race to race, what we're seeing this year is that actually many of the front runners don't have a pit success seconds to contend with, and as a result that is meaning for Miguel Ramos and Michael Mack in the Spirit of Race Ferrari that they may well be looking at a fairly untroubled run here through to the checkered flag. potentially almost well, effectively a lights to flag victory. Now, the various gaps are that Ramos leads over Valentin Pierberg by 6.3 seconds, with then Thomas Biaggi in third place. Philip Fromenvila is in fourth, 23 seconds back from the race leader. Mike Benham is fifth, the second of the Pro-Am cars. Sixth is Lorenco Berardo de Viega. Seventh is Sean Balfe. He's currently the third of the Pro-Am runners. And then eighth is Fran Rueda. Ninth is Hiroshi Hamaguchi. And 10th, Vito Postiglione. Now, this is the fight for 5th and 6th between Lorenco Berardo de Viega and Mike Benham. And this could be a good tussle. Benham looking for another Pro-Am podium after that difficult weekend in Paul Ricard. Because Mike Benham and Duncan Tappy winning outright for the Garage 59 McLaren team on their very first weekend in the National GT Open a couple of years ago in Estoril, back at the start of the 2016 season. And we've got a yellow flag somewhere on track as Com Ledegaard challenges Pier Giuseppe Perezzini, and around goes Perezzini. And that was ambitious from Ledegaard, looking to the inside of the Ferrari. Frustration for Pier Giuseppe Perezzini after the great drive from Marco Ciocci. It was for 14th and 15th. Here's another look at it. Ledegaard seeing a gap. Still a little bit of a tap to Perezzini. Around goes the Ferrari. Wouldn't be unsurprised if there's a level of investigation of that one. Here we see it again. It's hard to make the case that Ledegaard was fully alongside the Ferrari. Same time, in any instant, there's always two sides to every story. As Benham still continues to fend off Lorenco Berardo de Viega. So Mike Benham currently second in the Pro-Am class. Sean Balfe is the third of the Pro-Ams. Valentin Pierberg leading the Pro-Am class. So the overall classification is Miguel Ramos leads, 8 seconds clear of Thomas Biaggi, Valentin Pierberg. Thomas Biaggi is third, 4 seconds back from Pierberg. Fourth is Philip Fromenvila, 10 seconds back from that pair. Then fifth and sixth, the fight we're watching between Mike Benham and Lorenco Berardo de Viega, and that is some 28 seconds off the lead of the race. Then seventh is Sean Balfe, eighth is Fran Rueda, ninth Hiroshi Hamaguchi, and 10th Vito Postiglione. As Lorenco Berardo de Viega looks to the inside of Mike Benham, and Benham can't defend in time, so the BMW slides through. In terms of the AM class, that is currently led by Alexander Raquina from Luis Silva and Jose Balbiani. But with Davide Rizzo at the wheel of the Kaspersky Ferrari, he'll be looking to try and chase down Balbiani. Here's another look at the move from Lorenco Berardo de Viega alongside Benham. And by the time Benham moved to defend, the BMW was already in the space that McLaren wanted to occupy. So second place in the race, leading the Pro-Am class, Valentin Pierberg, and this is not unlike we had actually in the second half of the race in Paul Ricard, which is it's Miguel Ramos who leads, Pierberg is second, and third is Thomas Biaggi. But the potential spoiler in all of this is Philip Fromenvila, because Fromenvila is currently half a second lap quicker than Miguel Ramos. He's got a fair amount of ground to make up, but he's really trying to chase down this leading group of cars. So Pierberg, who finished third in that race one in Paul Ricard, actually after not making it overly difficult for Thomas Biaggi to pass him late on. I think the question is whether or not Thomas Biaggi in the Imperiale Racing Lamborghini is going to be able to do much about chasing down Miguel Ramos, because this essentially is the fight for the championship lead, because if it stays as it is, I think we would be looking at possibly a tie on points between Ramos and Mack and Costa and Fromenvila at the top of the standings, with then Biaggi and Venturini just a point or so back. So all to race for, as Biaggi has Rino Mastronardi in the SF Racing Ferrari tucked up behind him. Now, on that last lap, Ramos a little bit quicker than Biaggi. Biaggi quite a bit faster than Valentin Pierberg. Philip Fromenvila a little bit quicker than everybody. and certainly Philip Frommerby, the ML Frey Racing Lexus, he is going to be on the charge to try and snatch third position. Talking drivers on the charge, here's Com Ledergaard up behind Dominic Farnbacher, the fight for 13th and 14th. And Ledergaard currently under investigation over the incident with Pier Giuseppe Perezzini, doing all he can at the wheel of the Garage 59 McLaren. The other battle that's worth keeping an eye on is between Sean Balfe and Mike Benham, as Ledergaard to the inside of Farnbacher, and the experienced Lexus driver not making it overly difficult for the charging McLaren. And it's just really strange the way that the Farnbacher Lexus, maybe they've just gone the wrong direction on setup, because, or they've encountered some sort of gremlins, because they were so good in the opening couple of events of the season. But Paul Ricard was a very difficult weekend, and this weekend has not been the easiest so far. Thomas Jaeger, meanwhile, another driver on the prow. This is the fight for 10th and 11th. Jaeger in the Lettner Racing Mercedes, up behind Vito Postiglione. And then Hiroshi Hamaguchi just ahead of them. And this is important again with an eye towards the Pro-Am podium, because third in the Pro-Am class is potentially on the cards here for Thomas Jaeger, depending on how quickly he can move ahead of Postiglione. And then Hamaguchi, Postiglione not making it easy, trying to ease out the Mercedes, forcing Jaeger to look to the outside into the hairpin. Now we've seen there's traction there earlier on in the race. Jaeger decides not to force it. Not with 20 minutes left in the competition. So around the hairpin, they've got Hiroshi Hamaguchi right ahead of them. Meanwhile, Valentin Pierberg continues to lead the Pro-Am class from Mike Benham and then Sean Balfe. But then Hamaguchi and Jaeger, both a little bit quicker than Balfe and Benham, and therefore might fancy their chances at wrestling a podium from it, particularly as they've got a fair amount of time to play with. Swinging downhill out of turn 4. All the while, Miguel Ramos leads the way, 10 seconds clear of Valentin Pierberg, 12 seconds clear of Thomas Biaggi. And again, for Miguel Ramos, Mikael Mack having done the perfect job in the first phase of the race, and therefore making life very difficult for the rest of the field late on, because Miguel Ramos inheriting a good advantage and just able to run at the pace that's necessary. As Postiglione tries to close up to Hiroshi Hamaguchi. He's bringing Thomas Jaeger with him for company, but we've seen a couple of occasions this season already that Hamaguchi is very good at absorbing pressure, has got good pace as well. As Sean Balfe being challenged there by Fran Rueda at the front of your picture. And Sean Balfe currently third in the Pro-Am class, not actually making any progress on Mike Benham. And here's the potential change, as Fran Rueda, looking for every point that he can get from the race, closes up onto the Balfe Motorsport McLaren, as the pair of them accelerating out the final turn. Down the start and finish straight, there is Benham, and that wasn't such a good lap for Mike Benham. He gives away 3/10 to Sean Balfe in the battle for second and third in the Pro-Am class, as Rueda looks the inside of Balfe, and I expect Sean possibly got word on the radio that it's a normal pro lineup. There's no need, with an eye towards the Pro-Am Championship, to really fight Rueda. But then Balfe just braking a little bit later than Rueda, has to take evasive action. Sean currently 8th in the race overall now. So lots of battles that could come together very nicely in the latter stages of proceedings here. Particularly as Fran Rueda, it's not going to be too long at all before he's on to terms with Michael Benham. Here's another look at it. The BMW bursts out. Sean Balfe sees him coming, doesn't move across and close the door, risking contact. And both the Teo Marti Motorsport BMWs really showing great staying power so far this afternoon, as still Jaeger frustrated, but he's now behind Hiroshi Hamaguchi. So out of our view, Vito Postiglione's gained the position and has already disappeared. Now this is the fight for fourth in the Pro-Am class.
fight for 10th in the race overall. As Jaeger closes up behind Hamaguchi. There might be a gap there to the inside of the hairpin. Thomas Jaeger almost goes for it, and Hamaguchi defends, but it means that he just runs out a little bit wide in the Lamborghini. So Thomas Jaeger snatches the place, moves up into 10th position, moves up into 4th in the Pro-Am class, and he's only 6 seconds back down the road behind Sean Balfe. So this could be very interesting. His next target, of course, remains Vito Postiglione. Meanwhile, at the front of the field, on that last lap, Miguel Ramos, a 1 minute 45.9. Philip Fromenvila, or Thomas Biaggi rather, a 1 minute 45.2. Philip Fromenvila, 1 minute 45.0. So Ramos is being caught. Another look then, Jaeger and Hamaguchi. You see Hamaguchi cover the inside line, realises that the car won't go around the corner, has to run wide. And that is the opening for Thomas Jaeger. So Jaeger takes the place as here is Biaggi in pursuit of Valentin Pierberg. And really, Biaggi, if he can, needs to find a way past the Mercedes fairly promptly. If he can do that at the current rate of capture, well, he could certainly make things interesting with an eye towards race victory. And for all the approach of racking up the points for the Imperiale Racing Lamborghini, if Ramos and Mack are racking up the wins, then at some point Biaggi and Venturini are going to need to take victory. Will this afternoon be the opportunity? Not on the basis of that last lap where Miguel Ramos swung back in his favour in the lead of the race. So Valentin Pierberg has been ever more impressive as this season has unfolded. Was a little bit lost in Estoril. Difficult conditions confronted him in Spa, but in both Paul Ricard and now here in Hungaroring, the German has been very, very impressive. Meanwhile, coming past the country box window, Fran Rueda was about to make the move on Michael Benham, and Benham, having not had a brilliant lap, he's going to have Sean Balfe with him before too long as well. In the AM class, it is Raquina, still from Luis Silva, and Jose Balbiani. It's the fight for second and third. Flies in formation through the middle sector on the lap. Fourth place is Philip Fromenvila. Fifth, Lorenzo Berard Villegas. Sixth is now Fran Rueda. Seventh is Mike Benham. And eighth is Sean Balfe. Second and third in the Pro-Am class, very close. Ninth, Vito Postiglione, who's only 3.5 seconds back from them, and then it's Thomas Jaeger. So it really could be all change in the second half of the top 10 before too long. So the top half of the top 10 as well. It's not looking unlikely as if the order might start to shuffle. It's been a good lap from Thomas Biaggi relative to Valentin Pierberg. And so he now gets to within 0.8 of a second of the Mercedes. But Pierberg just bouncing the car over the brakes a little bit. This is really the challenge now for Pierberg when he's got that quick car absolutely filling his mirrors. And Biaggi, multiple World GT champion, closing up to Pierberg. They head towards turn 7 now, and Biaggi beginning to turn the screw. The fight for 7th, 8th and 9th and 10th is really about to come together as well as they came past the commentary box. But Valentin Pierberg, Mercedes, has been working so well today, but Thomas Biaggi inexorably closing towards his tail. But as Biaggi takes a couple of laps to finally reel in and pass the Mercedes, it is giving Miguel Ramos the opportunity to re-extend his advantage at the front of the field. It means that Biaggi is unlikely to be able to chase down the Portuguese driver if something were to go badly wrong for the Spirit of Race Ferrari. So where is this move for second going to come? Maybe into turn 1. I think more likely it's going to be in one of the more technical sections, because this is the point of the race where the Michelin tyres will have gone some way past their best, and it means that Biaggi is able to take a much tighter line through the final hairpin. Pierberg, though, gets the power down and accelerates along the start and finish straight. Thomas Biaggi trying to stay with him, but he's not going to be close enough to challenge into the hairpin, and now Pierberg's got the opportunity to drive a nice and wide car. That last lap for Valentin Pierberg, 1 minute 46.0, playing a 1 minute 45.6 for Thomas Biaggi. Means that Biaggi gets to under half a second now. Drift of Pierberg, that is fairly self-evident as swoops out of turn 4. Through the kink, and then into turn 7. And this is possibly where Biaggi might just be able to catch Valentin Pierberg a little bit by surprise. Here is Pier Giuseppe Perezzini, recovering from his earlier spin, as now Biaggi looks to turn up the heat. This, the fight for second and third place in the race overall. Thomas Biaggi looking for his second place finish of the season. Valentin Pierberg in pursuit of his second podium of the season. It's also going to be another Pro-Am class victory, the way things currently stand for Valentin Pierberg, irrespective actually of whether or not Thomas Biaggi is able to pick his way past him. Biaggi, headlights ablaze, and the Imperiale Racing Lamborghini pursues Valentin Pierberg as they head out turn 14 into turn 15, trying to stay tight to the apex is Pierberg, but you can see he's struggling a little bit with understeer through some of these slower turns. Watching for the pair of them to come out of the final hairpin. There is the race leader, Miguel Ramos, getting in amongst some traffic. Paul Scheusner, his next target. Also likely to have had a change on this lap for second in the Pro-Am class. Mike Benham, Sean Bow, Vito Postiglione and Thomas Jaeger all running as a train at the moment. Very little to choose between them, so some great battles wherever you look throughout the course of the field. As the clock ticks downwards. Here is a look then at Sean Balfe under pressure from Postiglione and Thomas Jaeger, and that move from Jaeger is enough to take third place in the Pro-Am class. Postiglione and Jaeger's next target is Mike Benham. So this is for the final 2 spots on the Pro-Am podium. It's also the fight for 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th in the race overall. And Benham is now about to have his mirrors absolutely filled. He's got a Lamborghini, Mercedes and another McLaren closing up onto his tail. There's any change in the fight for second, of course, we will go straight back to it. But for now, this is a wonderful 4-way fight inside the top 10. The McLarens sandwiching the Lamborghini and Mercedes. And Thomas Jaeger, always such an exciting proposition in the International GT Open. Behind Vito Postiglione, who's gone very, very quickly at times this year. And now Postiglione closes up to Mike Benham and looks to the inside into the chicane at turn 8. Benham, though, has none of it. And we saw earlier on in the race when Duncan Tappy was at the wheel of the Garage 59 McLaren, this is not going to be an easy car to overhaul. All the while, though, Thomas Jaeger trying to fight his way past as well. Sean Balfe watching, observing proceedings. Wants to see what Postiglione and Jaeger get up to with Mike Benham, probably before forcing his way into the fight, as Benham has to defend to the inside into turn 14. He fends off Postiglione. Postiglione, meanwhile, fends off Jaeger towards the hairpin at turn 15. Again, Benham moves across, preemptively covers the inside line, just making sure there is no Lamborghini Huracan-sized gap whatsoever into the final hairpin. This could be a bit of a sort out into turn 1 because the 3 cars come through the hairpin absolutely as one. They sprint onto the start and finish straight. Just 8.5 minutes left on the clock, and this is going to be a little bit of a battle of the brakes as they head towards the first turn. Jaeger to the inside, Postiglione to the inside, and Mike Benham moves across, covers the line altogether. Can he keep it tight? Just about, but Postiglione looks to draw alongside as the pair of them run side by side downhill. Postiglione and Benham. Postiglione darts one side, then the other into turn 3. And Mike Benham, he now can't close the door. Postiglione goes through. Can Jaeger force his way past as well? Yes, he can. And Benham loses 2 places in one fell swoop, and he might lose out here to Sean Balfe as they now contest the 3rd spot on the Pro-Am rostrum as Jaeger goes 2nd in class. And Benham immediately caught by Balfe. Still, Postiglione and Jaeger fight between themselves. Further up the road, some wonderful, wonderful battling. And this is always the challenge when the cars are so closely bunched that you can just risk over-committing, over-defending, and you'll lose out. Right, back to the fight for second, because it's as close as it's ever been, as Biaggi is right behind Valentin Pierberg, and they're about to get in amongst the traffic as well. You can see Giuseppe Perezzini and Paul Scheusner, they are fighting over 20th and 21st place. And if Pierberg has to hesitate in the traffic, then that is going to open the door to Thomas Biaggi. Miguel Ramos still leads the way. This is the fight for second. It's the two green cars, the darker green Mercedes, ahead of the bright green Lamborghini. They are in and amongst the traffic that's a lap down. Waved blue flags. But Scheusner and Perezzini busy fighting between themselves. They're not exactly going to be racing to leap aside as Paul Scheusner makes a slight mistake. He runs wide, and it is, oh, that's going to be very tight. And Valentin Pierberg gets the better of it as Scheusner rejoins the track. It's Thomas Biaggi who's slightly balked and continues to be a little bit balked into the chicane. Biaggi now jinks through. Pierberg's next target is Pier Giuseppe Perezzini. Perezzini, having seen off Scheusner, might be slightly more inclined to leap off the racing line, allow the fight for second through. I must say that. Shows no inclination whatsoever. And as Pierberg flashes his headlights, this is once more the opening for Thomas Biaggi. He closes up onto terms with the Mercedes. Oh, with a problem, and it's the race leader. Miguel Ramos has had a coming together with Johnny Molam. They've been tangled with each other, and it means Pierberg's taken the lead. Biaggi goes second. Ramos rejoins with damage in third. That's about to become fourth. And just as we were saying how straightforward an afternoon it had been, disaster for Miguel Ramos. There's bodywork rubbing at the front of the Ferrari. And now this is the fight for the lead. They're up with Perezzini, and it's Pierberg from Biaggi. 5 minutes to go here at the Hungaroring. What a race in prospect. As Pierberg flashes his headlights, he looks to the inside of Perezzini. Biaggi goes to the inside as well as Pierberg runs wide, and Thomas Biaggi makes contact and takes the lead of the race. Thomas Biaggi leads in the Imperiale Racing Lamborghini as he jumps ahead of Valentin Pierberg. What drama in the closing stages. And Biaggi leads and is trying to pull clear. There's Pierberg, and here is Miguel Ramos. Still the smoke pours forth as he continues in third position. He's got Philip Fromavila right behind him as bits of Ferrari fly off along the straight. You can see the front spoiler grinding against the tyre. And he's up behind Paul Scheusner, trying to put a lap on the Lamborghini. And here comes Philip Fromavila, two of the most prominent cars in the championship. And the Emil Frey Racing Lexus behind the Spirit of Race Ferrari. They're right behind the Conrad Lamborghini, which is about to go a lap down. We didn't see what happened between Ramos and the FF Course Ferrari, and whether or not there was a coming together or whether they just were at the receiving end of somebody else's spin. But now Fromavila looks to challenge Ramos. Ramos desperate to get ahead of the Lamborghini. And he's going to be able to do it now, I think, on the run towards turn 14. Yeah, Ramos leaps through. Philip Fromavila just waits to see where Scheusner goes. As more debris comes off the Ferrari. And hopefully that stopped it grinding against the tyre. But you can see there's all sorts of bits and pieces trailing, but no more smoke. Now here is what happened. Oh, it's Ramos trying to put the lap on Johnny Molam. And hard to see from that angle, didn't appear to be much of a gap. As then the side-to-side contact between Biaggi and Valentin Pierberg as he took the lead of the race. So now this is the fight for third, the ailing Ferrari. Here's our race leader, Thomas Biaggi, the Imperiale Racing Lamborghini Huracan. And sometimes if you're going for a championship, it's events like we've just seen going in your favour that can give you the advantage. Second place is Valentin Pierberg. Third, Miguel Ramos. Fourth, Philip Fromavila. Fifth, Lorenco Bear out of Jaeger. Sixth, Fran Rueda. Seventh, Vito Postiglione. Eighth is Thomas Jaeger. Ninth, Mike Benham. And 10th is Sean Balfe. Giovanni Venturini just trying to keep his cool in the pit box. As Biaggi launching on his way. Unbelievable drama late on. The incident between Ramos and Mollem is under investigation. Very, very hard to see from that angle how it all started. But the end result was a spin for Miguel Ramos, damaged the front of the Ferrari, and therefore the loss of the lead of the race. It has allowed the elevation of Thomas Biaggi, and Biaggi is about to start the penultimate lap now as he heads into turn 16 for the 38th time. On his way as he accelerates through to start the 39th lap of what's going to be a 40-lap race. There is Valentin Pierberg. Now, Miguel Ramos is only 3.4 seconds back from Pierberg here and was 1.2 seconds quicker than Pierberg last time round. Giuseppe Perezzini, who is the teammate of Miguel Ramos, one would anticipate is not going to make any lappery that difficult for Miguel Ramos. As Ramos flashes his headlights at Perezzini, says, please get out of the way, Pier Giuseppe, because I've got Philip Fromavila behind me. I've got a chance, a second position. Waved yellow flags for Perezzini. Of course, the difficulty for all these drivers is they're all having their own races. They don't quite know in the heat of the battle who they're racing with, who is lower down the order. But clearly, Miguel Ramos desperately needs to clear the AF Course Ferrari, and he does so now into turn 7. Perezzini, I think he's probably earned himself an extra portion of pasta at dinner tonight, because he then moves across in front of Philip Fromavila and makes sure that the Lexus is unable to follow through in that hole. So that safeguards things for Miguel Ramos, at least momentarily. And I think that's about to become a shift from an extra portion of pasta to all expenses paid trip to Maranello, because Perezzini is not leaping away to allow Philip Fromavila through whatsoever. Fromavila flashes his headlights, but essentially it has given a little bit of an advantage here to Miguel Ramos to consolidate third place. And Ramos can see Valentin Pierberg up the road ahead of him as Philip Fromavila now puts the lap on Pier Giuseppe Perezzini. But that, I think, has been enough to consolidate third for Miguel Ramos, as into the last lap of the race has gone Thomas Biaggi. But the last couple of spots on the podium are not settled just yet, because Pierberg's last lap was a 1:48.5. So 1:47.3 for Ramos. He's 2 seconds back from Pierberg, but has been about 2 seconds lap quicker than the German during the latter phase of the race. Thomas Biaggi, one victory last year en route to the championship. Victory this afternoon is going to possibly, I think quite likely, to move Biaggi and Venturini into the lead of the championship. As we hit the midway point of the season, it's been an incredibly dramatic conclusion to the race, and now for Giovanni Venturini, it is the wait for Thomas Biaggi to re-emerge at the end of this final lap. And Biaggi is taking no chances, using the curb when he knows he can, but not taking any unnecessary risks. Meanwhile, Miguel Ramos, I have to say, is getting ever closer to Valentin Pierberg, looking from the commentary box window to try and keep an eye on that battle, to keep you up to date with it, with Philip Fromavila also looking to try and join in. As Biaggi covers the line through the hairpin, climbs uphill, and this has been quite the afternoon of drama here in the Hungaroring. And more drama as Davide Rizzo slows in the Kaspersky Ferrari. Biaggi just avoids him as Thomas Biaggi and Giovanni Venturini take victory in the Hungaroring for Imperiale Racing. Delight on the pit wall for them, as Miguel Ramos follows Valentin Pierberg through. So Valentin Pierberg and Lance D'Arnold take second. Miguel Ramos and Mikel Mack into third, with Philip Fromavila and Albert Costa in fourth. Renko Berard Viega, Thiago Montero fifth from Fran Rader and Victor Bouveng, and then Vito Postiglione will hold off Thomas Jaeger in the fight for seventh and eighth. But Mike Benham and Duncan Tappy, or rather Mike Benham and Sean Bouth, nothing between them as they head through the final turn for the final spot on the Pro-Am podium. Here they come, out of the last corner. They've got Hamaguchi and Ledegar right with them, but Mike Benham has done enough to snatch 9th place and complete the Pro-Am podium behind Jaeger and Plashuta, and then Pierberg and Lance D. Arnold with taking the checkered flag there. It is Alexander Fraquina and Martin Conrad to win the AM class in the MS Racing Mercedes. What a dramatic race, with Miguel Ramos tripping up in traffic late on. It allowed Thomas Biaggi the opportunity to fight for the victory. He was able to push his way past Valentin Pierberg, and therefore it has been enough to give victory to Thomas Biaggi and Giovanni Venturini in the Imperiale Racing Lamborghini, as the last few cars come past us to take the checkered flag at the end of a very, very dramatic 70 minutes of racing. So look at the classification then. So fastest lap, so victory to Biaggi and Venturini, 2nd place, and Pro-Am honours to Pierberg and Lance D. Arnold. Then Miguel Ramos and Mikel Mack in 3rd from Albert Costa and Philip Fromavila. Berard de Vieira and Montero in 5th, head of teammates Bouveng and Rueda. Mario Plashuta and Thomas Jaeger, 8th place, 2nd in the Pro-Am class from Mike Benham and Duncan Tappy, who complete the Pro-Am podium. Martin Conrad and Alexander Fraquina winning the AM class from Basso and Balbiani, and then Coimbra and Silva, with Perezzini and Sciocci eventually finishing in 20th after an afternoon of adventures. We only lost one car, which was the Racing Trevor BMW. So in terms of the championship then, Venturini and Biaggi do move to the top of the standings, 3 points clear of Philip Fromavila and Albert Costa. Miguel Ramos and Mikel Mack 3rd in the points and still very much in the hunt, as Venturini and Biaggi celebrating in Parc Ferme. And rightly so, events maybe went in their way as Pierberg celebrates with Lance D. Arnold. Really impressive drive from Valentin Pierberg to win the class, very nearly win the race. The SPS Automotive team celebrating down in Parc Ferme as Miguel Ramos and Mikel Mack debrief, shaking of heads amongst the Spirit of Race team. Frustration there possibly, certainly not here, as Biaggi is all smiles as he removes his helmet. Hot work for Biaggi. He really, really had to push hard for that one. Valentin Pierberg also rehydrates. Very, very tough stint for him. These cars, cockpits can get very, very warm. Huge grin and thumbs up for our runners-up and Pro-Am class winners. Here, moment from our winners.
Thomas Biaggi, Giovanni Venturini, at last the first victory in a fantastic and surprising race. Giovanni, how was the beginning?
Finally, because we deserve it after a brilliant job of the team during all the free practice yesterday. And to be honest, the car was quite perfect. And I did the start, and then I passed the car to Thomas and finished the job. And finally, we win.
Thomas, the final part of the race was quite lively. A very nice duel also with lapped drivers. But at the end, you made it.
Yeah, I was pushing like hell. As Giovanni says, Imperiale Racing and Lamborghini, they did a fantastic job. The car was set up in a perfect way. I was missing a lot on the straight compared to Mercedes, so it was not easy to pass him. I knew that the only moment where I could pass him was with some action, some car to lap in front, and it happened, luckily. So then I achieved this fantastic victory. For me, it's the second overall in the championship, and that's good for our championship position.
Yeah, I think you must be first, but for now, podium. Well done, guys. Bravi. Complimenti.
It was Mikael Mack who led away from pole position at the start of the 7th race of the season alongside Lance d'Arnold and Giovanni Venturini as they headed towards turn 1. It was really those 3 cars that gave us the story of the afternoon. It was a lightning getaway from Duncan Tappy, brought the Garage 59 McLaren up into 4th position. They were all cleanly through in the opening stages, as one of the stories of the first half of the race was the formidable progress of Marco Ciocci from the very back of the grid. Ciocci hustling his way past Vitantonio Liuzzi, eventually up to about 8th place by the time the pit stops happened. Post-pit stops, though, it all went wrong for the number 8 Ferrari, a tag between Cobb Ledegar and Pier Giuseppe Perezzini rotating. Perezzini, Ledegar thereafter was an absolute charge, and eventually finished in 12th overall. Front of the field, though, Miguel Ramos was leading the way, as behind Thomas Jaeger was flying in the Lettner Racing Mercedes, as was Vito Postiglione in the second Imperiale Racing Lamborghini. But this then, decisive moment of the race, as Miguel Ramos tagged Johnny Molam as he was putting a lap on the FF course for Ferrari. That promoted Valentin Pierberg into the lead of the race. But a slight error into turn 1 from Pierberg gave the opening for Thomas Biaggi, who was able to scythe his way past. And so it was Thomas Biaggi and Giovanni Venturini who scored their first victory of the season. Second place going to Valentin Pierberg and Lance d'Arnold, and Miguel Ramos and Mikael Mack completing the outright race podium. So on to the 3rd step of the rostrum for Ramos and Mack. Runners-up, Pierberg and Arnold, and race winners, Venturini and Biaggi. And the first win of the year for Imperiale Racing. Italian national anthem in honour of an Italian team, and 2 Italian drivers on the top step of the International GT Open podium in the Hungaroring. So 3rd place, but wondering what might have been for Mikael Mack and Miguel Ramos. Nonetheless, despite the disappointment, still finished on the podium, still got a lot of points, and are still very much in the championship hunt. For Pierberg and Arnold, a really impressive drive. 2nd place overall and victory in the Pro-Am class. Whereas for Biaggi and Venturini, as Thomas Biaggi said in the interview, he maybe needed events to swing in his favour. They did, they converted, and they celebrate on the top step of the podium and with the championship lead. Really entertaining racing here at the Hungaroring, and of course we'll be back tomorrow for the 60-minute race, which gets underway just after 2 o'clock local time. So with the drivers having posed the photos, time to make merry with the bubbly for Venturini, Biaggi, Arnold and Pierberg. They are very, very happy with the way that the afternoon unfolded. Turn our attention to the Pro-Am rostrum. And an excellent 3rd place for Michael Benham and Duncan Tappy, both of whom put up a formidable defensive effort. Thomas Jaeger and Mario Plasciuta in the Lettner Racing Mercedes. Jaeger, again, a sterling drive, and Valentin Pierberg and Lance D'Arnold certainly now beginning to get into position where Pierberg is a serious contender to challenge for Pro-Am Championship honours. That's going to be another title fight that's going to go all the way to the wire. But the racing mechanics ready to cheer their men on to the rostrum. So third place for Duncan Tappy and Michael Benham, the Garage 59 McLaren. Runners up, Mario Plasciuta and Thomas Jaeger.
Valentin Pierberg and Lance D'Arnold to the top step of the Hungaroring rostrum. Victory for Lechner Racing on to the trophies. Thank you from Mike Benham and Duncan Tappy to the Garage 59 team. Runners up, Jaeger and Plasciuta flying once more in the Mercedes. And for Pierberg and Arnold, well, they didn't quite get the race victory, but pretty much everything else this afternoon in the SPS Mercedes, and they are all smiles, not unsurprisingly, on the top step of the Pro-Am rostrum. So as the celebrations continue in the Hungaroring, we will be turning our attention to tomorrow and the 8th race of the International GT Open season. We'll be getting underway just after 2 o'clock. So until then, from Ben Evans in Hungary, it is goodbye. So we now turn our attention to the AM podium, and again, very closely contested with third place Luis Silva and Antonio Coimbra. Runners up, Marcio Basso and Jose Balbiani, and our winners, Alexandra Fraquina and Martin Conrad, to the top step of the podium after a very impressive performance in the MS Racing Mercedes, which took them to 14th overall. So both of the Sports and new Mercedes getting on to the AM podium. Coimbra and Silva celebrating in third place. Basso and Balbiani runners up en route to 16th overall. And Aquina and Conrad mixing it at the sharp end of the field in the early stages of the race. And therefore they celebrate on the top step of the AM rostrum. So wonderful afternoon of racing at the Hungaroring. We will be back tomorrow for the 8th round of the championship. Until then, it's goodbye from Hungary.